Angela, if you want to turn the recording on, that'd be great. Awesome. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day and joining us. My name is Jeff Craven. I'm the Executive Director of NAMTC. And really the purpose of today's shared conversation is really to talk about what ESAs do, the kinds of consortium activities and so forth that we lead. And it's really geared towards our corporate partners and interested parties that that would be that are interested in learning a little bit more about ESAs and how they could benefit from working with organizations such as NAMTC and AESA as well. Hopefully, Drew, I hope you've seen there actually is a phone number there that you can dial in if you need to use that for the audio portion. So. That should be over there in the chat window. So with us today, we actually have three panelists. Unfortunately, Jeff Rothenberger from Pennsylvania cannot be with us. He is involved with another meeting today. But we have, and I can address a little bit of what Jeff has done in Pennsylvania. That's currently where I'm located. We have Evan Abbey, who's the program director of AEA Learning Online, as well as Diana Wendell, coordinator of the school library system in the Orange Ulster BOCES in New York. And we kind of done that to really kind of give you a flavor of because one of the things you're going to find is ESAs, why we're all known as educational service agencies, we all operate just a little bit differently. We have a little bit different initiatives and so forth. And I know for a lot of corporate partners that can be confusing and so forth. And so today's really to talk about, so you can learn more about us and also how, there's ways maybe that we can assist you as well. So with that, I think I'm going to kick this off, and I'm going to start with, start with you, Evan. You talk a little bit what you're doing with the Iowa AEA, some of the state projects and so forth, and just kind of give us a little flavor of some of the activities you've been doing.
Sure. The AEAs in Iowa are a little unique as far as intermediary units. We do get an appropriation from the state. And one of the big purposes for that is for equity. We try to provide equitable services to especially rural districts and such. So we have 9 service agencies in the state. I actually lead a program that is a collaboration of all 9 of the AEAs. And its original charter was to provide online professional development on behalf of the AEAs in one spot. You don't need all AEAs offering their own online courses. You could offer more courses, better courses by centralizing. We've expanded that to include basically all types of services that help with online learning, both for teachers as well as for students. So districts use our services to deliver their own online or blended learning and such. So I have some things that, from my own program perspective, that I'm overseeing and working with. And then there are things that I'm also collaborating with the other media and technology directors from the AEAs themselves too. So looking at that latter group first, one of the things that the media directors have wrestled with is that they have digital resources in a lot of different places, and they wanted all those digital resources that they purchased or licensed to be in one spot. And so that's one of the things that we've been working with a vendor on a collaborative process, is the building of a digital repository, if you will, for that content. But they didn't want just a repository. They wanted it so that students could engage with the resources much more so than they would normally. So they wanted to include tools like the ability to create custom playlists and backpacks, the ability to translate materials, to read those aloud, to allow students to go and to annotate, keep notes right on them and such, depending on the material type, obviously. And so this value added has has kind of made this repository plus. In fact, we don't really have a name for it per se, other than its branded name, which we call NEA Scout. So that we've been engaging with, and that's been a collaborative process with 9 AEAs, thinking about how we can engage with the vendor to go and create this system. In addition to that, we also had each AEA, and this is including my own program, offer their own courses for credit, and you needed a system to go and register for those courses as well. And so we each had our own registration system. And so that was another aspect we wanted to do, was let's move everything to one registration system so that all of our offerings, whether they be courses or workshops or whatever the case is, something that's time-based that you would register for would exist in one registration system. Well, that beget a lot of problems because people charge different things for different courses. People have different metadata, different fields in the database. So under a course for one AEA, they might have these fields and another one has these. So there was a lot of discussion and aligning of all of our services to go before we could actually go and get that product. In addition to those two things, then we realized that we had an issue with people logging into systems as well. And I know a lot of states have addressed this, the idea of single sign-on. And that's where we were as well. We needed to develop a single sign-on solution, not just a single sign-on, but actually have a directory information so that we could connect to local school student information systems so the information was automatically updated and brought to one spot. And that way, when you go to log into the registration system, not only are you logging in and they know it's you, but it also pulls down what district you're in, what grade you're in, what subject area you teach and such. And then that allows that system to go and do more customized experiences for teachers. You can say, kind of like when you're on Amazon, you can say, hey, did you know that these courses are available in your area for middle school science teachers or whatever the case is? That type of customization can exist unless you have the data brought down for that. That data is also very important for the media repository, EA Scout, that we have, because again, it can identify resources based on grade level and such for that. We also attach it to our other learning management systems. My own program, we host a learning management system, Moodle, for any district in the state that would like to use it. We've built our own, another learning management system for self-paced learning that we have. And so we use single sign-on to access those as well. So that's kind of a flavor of the bigger things that we're working with in the state as far as reaching out with vendors and looking to create systems that can handle large amounts of data, large amounts of users and workflow, and allow everybody's services to be in one spot, and yet still allow for some customization as well. And, it's kind of what I had come to prepare to talk to. I can give you an example overview of any of the system if there's interest, but I'll turn it back to Jeff.
Okay. Thanks, Evan. For especially for like a lot of our corporate partners and so forth. So what there really is an opportunity for them to really work with you folks in integrating some of their solutions into, for example, into your single sign-on solution and so forth. I mean, you're always looking for that. So
yeah, and it depends on the nature of the service. One of the things that we've been, and this is more a learning online than the AEAs as a whole. One of the things that we provide as a service is we provide a training system where we've developed trainings for local teachers and such. You can think of bloodborne pathogens, mandatory reporting of child abuse, as well as professional development trainings. There are a lot of trainings that are out there, and a lot of those trainings are necessary for not only staff, but also for students as well. We have a Healthy Kids Act in Iowa that requires all students to have taken CPR. by the time they graduate. Well, one of the things we've been doing recently is working with a lot of content vendors that have content. Some of it resides on their own system. If they have that content that sits in LTI access, we have the ability to go and basically port that over within our system. And we can do it so that a local vendor can retain a fee if they'd like. So if they want to have it so that when you go to the course, you pay up front or whatever the case is, or if they wanted to create an arrangement for us where we'd get it, paid on basis of usage or whatever the case is, we can do that. We're working again with a couple of different vendors in that capacity. So in terms of like newer things in the last 6 months, that's really been where we've ramped up quite a bit. So we've been working with a lot of curriculum and content vendors who have online content for teachers or for students that they can make available within our common platform and do so through like an LTI access or such. So there's a lot of great opportunities there.
Great, thanks, Evan. We'll come back with some questions actually for the whole panel. Next, I want to turn it over to Diana Wendell, who is with the Orange Ulster BOCES, and let her talk a little bit about some of the projects and so forth. And if you want, Diana, kind of talk a little, if you can kind of frame how the BOCES and so forth interact and so forth, maybe some of the differences between the BOCES is, for example, what you would experience with an AEA, and I can obviously talk about the IUs as well.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. So just a little background. So BOCES, for anyone that's not familiar, is Boards of Cooperative Education Services. And we've been around since, some of them have been around since 1948. So they were created by the legislature, so that was 70 years ago. Not all the existing BOCES today have been around that long. So right now we have 37 BOCES across the state. So we're kind of we sort of do less things altogether than what Evan was talking about, but are just a little bit more about how we serve students. So actually, when the BOCES are started, the school districts had the option of participating or not, and luckily most of them did join, but there are a few across the state. I actually have one large district in my area that does not participate, and that means they're not eligible to get aid back from the state when they buy services from us. And then also in New York, 5 of the largest cities do not participate in BOCES. So New York City, Yonkers, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo do not participate. So that's one thing I think to keep in mind for vendors. And then we provide probably really similar services across the BOCES as other education service agencies. We have career and tech programs for high school students. We have all kinds of services for students with disabilities. We have adult ed programs. We sponsor regional summer schools. We do a lot of professional development and instructional technology. Kind of more related to NAMTC, we have a statewide kind of similar organization. It's called EMTA, and actually Jeff came to our spring conference. We used to do a fall conference and a spring conference, and now we're just doing a spring conference because we found we're sort of a small group and people just can't get away all the time. So it's the so if you Google it, it's New York. You just put in New York State Educational Media Technology Association. You find our website, or I can give you the URL is www.edmediatech.org. So basically, we get together and we have corporate partners who are members of the organization, which is a little bit different than a lot of other associations, and we do a corporate partner showcase every year as part at the beginning of our conference. And it's kind of a nice opportunity where we do it in a suites hotel, and each of the corporate partners has a suite, and then we have a schedule, and all the BOCES media folks go around and we meet for about 20 minutes with each of the vendors and get an opportunity to find out what's new with them, and they get to hear about what kind of needs we have. Other statewide things that we do, not a lot is purchased for everyone in New York State. We do have a program that's run by the State Library called Novel New York, and they've been doing this for quite a while where they buy databases for the whole state. Unfortunately, they're still using federal IMLS funds for that, even though they're supposed to be using more state money. So that is one thing, and they do change up those offerings every couple of years. Other kinds of organizations that we have within the BOCES is we have regional information centers, and there are 9 of those statewide. They live within a particular BOCES and provide a variety of technology services. They purchase hardware and software for school districts based on what folks want, and they do provide shared technology personnel. And then we have school library systems that I'm a part of, and we are a state-funded program, so we get money every year. We're one of the few programs within the BOCES that actually does get money from the state, and we provide professional development, and we buy technology for the schools. Also, within the BOCES, we have model schools, which are kind of a little bit similar to school library systems, where they provide technology, professional development, tech integration types of services for the districts. We also have some kind of voluntary statewide purchasing consortia. One of our BOCES, Erie 1 BOCES, which is in the western part of the state near Buffalo, they have something called the New York State Instructional Technology Contract, and that does a lot of like student information. They go out and get, they basically do bidding, and they do RFPs for all kinds of different technology things used in the schools. And then School Library System sponsors another consortia called SCORE, and that stands for Consortia of Online Resources for Education. And we mostly get pricing for databases and some media things. A couple other things that the BOCES do, we have something called SCDN, which is Staff and Curriculum Development Network, and that's where staff developers from across the state, they started this a number of years ago, and they get together periodically, and they have there's like a ELA group and a math group and a ed leadership group and a social studies group, and this was real active when the Common Core came out, and so they were pushing out a lot of, trying to help standardize, or not really necessarily standardized training, but kind of share resources in terms of, okay, these are new initiatives that the state is interested in everyone doing, and how can we kind of get together and plan staff development and share those resources. A couple years ago, there was a big virtual advanced placement program that happened, and that was a state-funded grant where most of the BOCES were involved with creating online advanced placement courses. Some, I think a lot of them were blended models with some in-classroom instruction and some online, and that was trying to address the issue that some of our areas, especially the rural areas, some of these high schools have few, if any, advanced placement courses. And so that was kind of a big initiative a few years ago. In addition to the model schools group, there's a distance learning group, and I actually don't know a whole lot about them, but a couple years back, the distance learning group and the model schools group actually used to meet with our educational media technology group, and that's when we did a fall conference and brought in a big speaker, and then we also had the spring conference. So I don't know, New York is so large. I was interested, somebody was saying that, I think maybe was it Evan saying, like, a particular IEA, was doing, a certain initiative. It's, we kind of don't have that really going on in New York, other than some of these, like the the bidding or the pricing thing may be organized by a particular BOCES, but then we tend to more have these groups that get together, and then there's sort of shared leadership in terms of, you know, different folks from different BOCES kind of leading that, and then that, you know, sort of fluid and changing over time. Our educational and media technology group, we've kind of dabbled or tried to get kind of a pricing negotiating thing going, but we haven't really done too much of that lately. But you know, that's something that we are looking at in terms of working with school library systems. So that's kind of what's going on in New York.
Thanks, Diana. Just kind of build upon what Diana talked about. I'll be wearing the role of Jeff Rothenberger. In Pennsylvania, there's 29 intermediate units, and it's kind of interesting because, again, as I mentioned, every educational service agency just operates a little bit differently, you know, than the others. In Pennsylvania, with the 29 intermediate units, they get minimal. Actually, I don't think they get any funding anymore from the state for the basic operations. So some of the intermediate units operate what's called a subsidy deduction, which is a per student as voted upon the budget, and so they would provide services such as like special education, some of those things. But again, a majority of the school districts in the region would vote on the budget. Well, that said, it tends to lend itself, especially in the IUs of Pennsylvania, is that there is a statewide group called PAIU that actually meets next week in Seven Springs. And with that, they'll bring like all the job alikes together, including the technology and media directors and so forth. So they'll all come together for a conference and so forth. But as far as the actual coordination of things statewide, it's like the answer, it's kind of hit or miss. You know, because there's 29 intermediate units, each one of them's kind of doing their own thing in the region, you know, be it right or wrong. In some cases, it gets competitive, especially, you know, in some of the areas, and, you know, in some of the technology areas and so forth. But then on the other hand, there's also some collaborative activities going on. For example, in Jeff Rothenberger's IU, one of the things they do is they negotiate a statewide contract for Nearpod and Gaggle. And of course, as part of that, they've negotiated the pricing and so forth, and they coordinate the orders and so forth for schools and IUs across the state. And of course, in exchange for doing that, I mean, I think they get a small commission really just to cover their, you know, their expenses for coordinating that. So you kind of have pockets of those activities going on within the state. Like New York, there are some purchasing groups, large, you know, statewide purchasing groups and so forth for products and stuff that schools can participate in. One of the things we do at the state level, and again, another I use, for example, discovery licensing, as well as some of the other media product licensing. They will go and negotiate a statewide price, you know, on behalf of the state and so forth. You know, they certainly, I mean, they're doing some things collaboratively, some things competitively on their own, but again, it's just it's kind of hit or miss with that. And I think that's one of the things that, again, I'll put on my hat. One of the things I retired from our intermediate unit about, I guess it'll be 3 years in January. And one of the things I had the opportunity to do was work with a lot of companies and so forth, you know, and corporate partners on various initiatives, not only within Pennsylvania, but, you know, other initiatives and so forth, even through AESA and NAMTC. And I think one of the challenges, especially for our corporate partners, is how do we get involved? How do we find the right people to talk to, the movers and the shakers? How do you find the Dianas, the Evans, and so forth? And that's really where I can't, I can't stress enough that, I think the relationships that you can build through an organization or membership and participation with NAMTC is invaluable. Because again, it'll get you in touch with those right people. It'll get you in the, it'll get you basically in the same room. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a statewide contract as a result of that, but at least, again, you can come to this group, and we're always looking for, assistance, and you can learn more about what our needs are and so forth, and how your company and corporation can assist. And again, with that, with NAMTC, there's also another organization called AESA, which you may have heard about, which again builds upon that as well. And I think that's one of the things that we'd really like to encourage. Any companies are interested to really learn more about ESAs or how they can work to join NAMTC and AESA. And if you're not even really sure about membership or anything like that, come to one of our conferences or leadership summits. Participate in that, participate in the discussions and so forth. Learn about some of the activities that are going on. With that, I'm going to go ahead and I guess I'll open it up to the panel, to both Diana and Evan. What would be your recommendation for any? Let's say I'm selling whatever widgets or whatever. What's your recommendation for really approaching ESAs and so forth to for possible solutions and coordination and so forth?
I'll just say, like what you said for NAMTC here in New York, it's good to be involved in our EMTA group, because when we have our meeting, we have a pretty good representation of the BOCES across the state, and creating those personal relationships. And I know I've spent time explaining to vendors how to get hooked up with some of the purchasing that's going on. So I don't really know any other way in terms of finding out that information other than talking to the folks at the educational service agencies. And our BOCES statewide does have a website. It doesn't have a ton of information, but it does kind of it has a map of the state and kind of points you to who your local people would be. And also too, I didn't really talk too much about funding, but like in New York we have COSERs, which are cooperative services, and so our school districts, when they purchase something through the BOCES, then they're able to get something called BOCES Aid. So actually, right from the BOCES website, the description for that says that so school districts can receive funds from the state called BOCES Aid for the shared services purchased the previous year from the BOCES, and the aid is directly distributed to the individual districts. So that's kind of the incentive, even though, like Jeff was saying, in Pennsylvania, you don't get much money from the state. We don't either. We have to charge a service charge on things that we sell, because we have to have money to turn on the lights and pay the staff and all that good stuff. But I don't know if Evan has other ideas, but in terms of for vendors or corporate partners to make those connections. But I think, as Jeff said, getting to know those people at the education service agencies is a good way. I
guess the advice I'd give, this is only my perspective on things. I never act on cold calls, vendors directly reaching out to me. Usually what I act on when I'm seeking a solution is recommendation from one of my colleagues. So if I hear about what someone's doing in another state or something like that, then I'm more likely to reach out to the vendor and find out more information from them and their services. And that's the thing that kind of goes along. This is a bit of a cliche. Service agencies don't have a whole lot of money. anywhere in the nation, and what they have is usually very purposefully spent on, so they are going to look for certain products that fit in line with what their high needs are, whether it's them directly or whether they're providing services directly to their schools. And so, and again, what they will probably often do is look to their fellow states and other places to see what they're doing, and then reach out to vendors. The thing that vendors can do, though, is to have just really spend a lot of time working on the relationships with those different entities. It can be kind of a long slog, of just touching base and hearing about what the agencies are doing and such over a long period of time. And often it can take 2 or 3 years before, I know, again, just speaking from my own perspective, a service agency can go from initial idea to actually working out a product. Probably the best advice that I can give is that, much like what Jeff said with the work that Jeff Rothenberger has done with Gaggle and Nearpod, anything a vendor can do to create some sort of shared partnership in services that would be offered to schools, I think that there's more and more of a market for that for service agencies. Service agencies are, because their dollars are stretched thin, they can't go and purchase services like they used to on behalf of their districts. But there is a way in which they can partner with them to get the vendor more access, and then reduce costs to the districts themselves. I'm seeing more and more of those type of partnerships. So the flexibility that a vendor can have for that type of solution is very much appreciated.
I think in New York, we, over the years, with some of the things that happened in the news, like a lot of places had problems actually going outside of the state. So they might not have a lot of colleagues that are outside of New York State. So I think, the sort of obvious thing of vendors, exhibiting at conferences and offering free trials is a way to get in. I know, we have certain people that are really innovators, and sometimes someone, within our group will maybe be the first person to try a particular product, and then we, through our EMTA group, we will, if we're interested in that kind of product, we'll talk to that person and see, how did it go, and just kind of take it from there.
Great, thanks. Angela, I'm going to call on you a little bit, because you kind of, your organization, of course, is in Massachusetts, and that's even a little bit different from the way that the BOCES and the IUs and the AEAs operate. Maybe just give us a quick background on some of the ways that you operate, or some of the things, that initiatives that you've going on there. Sorry about that. I should
That's okay. No, that's fine. We generally we have 26 education collaboratives spread out throughout the state. And we are not funded at all through any state funding, so we are all self-funded. And in terms of relationships with vendors, we generally try to work out deals. We do a lot of consortium purchasing at our collaborative for Western Mass for art supplies, paper supplies. We do a very large food service collaborative purchase here. That we send out to bid, things like that. In terms of working with vendors, we generally do it for our member districts, which are 37 districts. And at other times, we will put out a bid that the whole state can use. And we have done that for some Chromebooks recently. That's generally sort of how we're all very independent here, and our districts are also as independent. They really like to just do their own thing. So we really don't have a lot of statewide coordination of things. It's really more just some regional pockets.
Okay, great, thanks. We do have a question, Diana. What was the statewide website address for BOCES? You can.
Well, actually, if you just Google, just do New York BOCES. I actually don't. Oh, wait, I think I do have it. It's www.boces.org.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay. With that said, are there any questions for any of our panelists from any of the viewers that we have today? This will be this session will be archived, be available on the NAMTC website for reference. Because again, these questions and information, requests always come up from time to time. One of the things I want to just remind everybody of, Wednesday, November 28th, the NAMTC Summit will be held out in Colorado Springs prior to the ESA conference. We are shifting to a full day Wednesday, Tuesday afternoon. We may be doing some site visits as well as some school district visits as well. Prior to that, it won't be a quote-unquote official conference day per se, but we're working on some activities there for Tuesday afternoon. But Wednesday will be the full day. If you're interested, the best thing to do, you go to namtec.org. My contact information's there, and be happy to talk to you about some of the participation, the opportunities to participate there with that. And again, one of the things that's a little bit different about a leadership summit than any other conference you'll attend is the fact that you're actually a very integral part of that leadership summit. So many conferences, and I've been there. Like whether it's an ISTE, an INACOL, or whatever. A lot of times the vendors really, and that's the way. But you'll have a booth set up in the exhibit hall, and maybe you'll see the people at breakfast. They might have coffee breaks there, and you might have some dedicated exhibit time. But it's very tough to get that one-on-one conversation with the key stakeholders. Really, what happens with the leadership summit is, we also have the breakfast and some dedicated exhibit time. But really, we want you at the table with us as we're hearing and listening to the.
No, I'm hosting the webinar for NAMTC, so I'm not participating.
Okay. So anyhow, with that, we'd love to have you, participate with that if at all possible. And again, we also love to see you have consider joining NAMTC as a membership. Again, information is available on our website, namtec.org. You can email me or contact or call me anytime like that. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. With that, I don't know if I have any more questions. Any more comments from Diana, Evan, or Angela?
No.
Okay. With that, I want to say thanks everybody for attending. This again will be available on the website, and again, we'll be. I guess our next share conversation will be in September. So we hope everyone has a great summer. Take care. Have a great day.